Father, bless now. In Jesus' name, amen. I wanted to take this hour and talk about a teamwork mentality in relationship to youth ministry. And the most effective team that you could have in any youth ministry is obviously the young people and their family. A healthy youth ministry begins when leaders are mature enough to realize that parents are not the enemy. And when we understand that students would be healthier if they were ministered to together with their families, we're going to be moving in a very good and fruitful, productive direction in our youth ministries. For a lot of youth workers, and I think myself, I would include myself, no question about it, in this category. This reality comes with age and experience, both as a parent and maybe even as part of our spiritual maturation as we begin to grow spiritually. Prior to becoming a parent, the idea I had was, I kind of was intimidated by the parents. I didn't want to really get to know the parents. I didn't want to even meet the parents. I just wanted to get the teenagers, because you didn't view parents as partners in your youth ministry. You kind of looked at them as people that could put the brakes on what you wanted to do, could slow you down, and could keep you from fulfilling maybe like the boot camp mentality that you had in youth ministry. What we'd love for parents to do is to just take their preteens and to say to us, bring them in someday, have a meeting with us and say, here they are, they're yours. You can have them for the next 7 or 8 years. Do whatever you have to do, but make them kind, loving, honorable young men and women, so that when we come back and pick them up, they'll be good to go. That's sometimes the youth ministry and people within the youth ministry. And, you just have this idea like, okay, I'm going to convert them, I'm going to baptize them, I'm going to educate them, I'm going to sanctify them, I'm going to have them dry cleaned and ready for pickup as soon as, I'm done. You come and get them, they're yours, and they'll be done. It doesn't work that way. In fact, the most effective youth leaders realize that you're not really going to accomplish the goals that God sets before you in youth ministry work with these young people unless you actually involve the parents in this work and create a real team, if you will, a team atmosphere. These days, I absolutely love when parents of teenagers come and join their young people. Now, the teenagers probably despise it. They hate it with their whole heart. Because, that the whole idea of coming to youth ministry, youth group, is to get away from your parents. Imagine the idea that they have to come with you now. I don't think that parents will do that on a consistent basis. I don't know any that do it on a consistent basis. I think that wise parents, smart parents, spiritual parents will come and they'll find out exactly what it is that they're sending their young people to be a part of every weekend, whether it be Friday night or Saturday night or Sunday or during the week, whatever the case might be. I think it's crucial that they get involved. For years, we started a bus ministry for years in our local church in Massachusetts. And I'm trying to think of the day. I think it was 1979. But I can't recall it. Maybe some of you could help me. You remember the tragedy that occurred in Jonestown, Guyana? What was it? 77, was it? 77, 78. I think it was November. I think I remember it happening on my birthday. But anyhow, you remember that Jim Jones, a cult leader out in California, took all of these people with him to South America, Guyana, and they built a little colony, and he was very, he was like their self-appointed guru, and he was controlling them, and he was manipulating them, and using fear as a tactic. And then, people that went with him, most of these people, Americans from the West Coast and different parts of the country as well, but their representatives, political representatives, family members in the states approached their representatives and said, we don't know what's going on down there. Can you send somebody? Can you yourself go and find out what in the world is going on down there and what this guy is doing to them? Well, they did. Congressman, his name was Ryan, I believe his last name was, he went down with a group of aides, and other politicians went with him just to find out what was going on. They met with Jim Jones, and they confronted him about some concerns and some fears that family members had. And then when this little group, this political group arrived there, then there were people that would privately meet with them and say, "Get us out of here. We fear for our lives." And so they confronted. And then, they wrapped up their meeting, and then they headed to this very small airport in the middle of the jungle, at which time Jim Jones sent out a group of people with automatic weapons and shot them, killed the congressman, took many lives, and then ordered that his people, over 1,000 of them, would drink this cyanide-laced Kool-Aid and have a suicide mass murder, which is exactly what happened. But the interesting thing about that is that here we are, Massachusetts, right? And we are doing what's called at that time bus ministry. We're going out every Saturday. We're knocking on people's doors. We're asking parents, would you like to send your children to our Sunday school program, our Saturday Bible club is what we call it. And, parents like, oh, yeah, you want to take my kids? Oh, my God, take them, would you like to put clothes on them before we take them on the bus? Yeah, whatever, just get rid of them. Here, take them. And, and we were, what a successful ministry we had. We were one local small assembly, and we had 3 or 4 buses that were being filled with kids, and we were bringing them in and teaching them about Christ and the Bible, the gospel. It was amazing. And then this tragedy occurred in Jonestown, Guyana. And you know that the next Saturday when we went knocking on doors, we had a handful of kids. Because these parents finally thought to themselves, who are these people picking up our children? Where are they taking them? What are they doing to them? How do we know that they're not going to have a big Kool-Aid party themselves and we're never going to see our children again? And on the one hand, you could be like terribly offended by it and taken back, as I think I remember being stunned by it, knocking on the door and having the parents come. These are children that we had been picking up for weeks, months. And then the parents looking at us saying, we're not going anymore. And I was like, why? No, never mind. They just slammed the door. And we're like, what's going on? Until we realized this is a reaction towards what happened. And it was like finally these parents were beginning to question who we are. What are we doing? And you know what I said? Praise God. It's about time. Those are questions you should have been asking the day we first knocked on your door. Not months after we've been taking your children. But they didn't. They wouldn't even think about it. They're just like, oh, wow, someone's coming to take my kids away for several hours. That is awesome. I can go back to sleep. Right? So it's healthy when parents ask questions. It's healthy when they engage themselves. They get involved. They say, okay, where are you going? In fact, I love it when parents say, and this still happens to this day. People say, oh, I have a teenage son. I'm just coming into the church. What do you have available, youth ministry-wise? Talk to them on the phone. Well, we go evangelism on Friday nights. We have a Bible study for young people on Saturdays. We have, youth rallies. We have trips that we take. Oh, great. I had a precious grandmother tonight. We take this trip annually to New York City. To New York, and we go up there and we have great ministry. We sing under the big tree at Rockefeller Center. We preach the gospel. We give out tracts. Rockefeller Center, Times Square. We have permits to preach the gospel in Penn Station and at the Staten Island Ferry, where people come. Hundreds, thousands of people wait to take the Staten Island Ferry across from Manhattan over to Staten Island, and they have to listen to us. They can't go anywhere. So we sing. And as horrible as it may sound, they still have to hear us, and then we preach the gospel to them. It's like you got a captive audience. It's amazing. But she's got a grandson here in the church. They've just come into the church. She's enrolled him in the Christian school, and this is about the 4th or 5th time that she has approached me and she says, "Do you know how dangerous New York City is?" And I was like, yeah. And she says, "But is he going to be all right?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." I says, "We do this all the time." I said, "We've been doing this since 1983. We've only lost a few kids, man. Don't worry about it." I mean, you really do have to keep an eye on everybody. I'm not going to lie to her, but we do, and we haven't lost anybody. We've never come back and said, we brought 50 kids, we only brought back 49. We haven't lost anybody. Nobody's been seriously injured, kidnapped, nothing like that. Praise God. But she is like, "Oh, you sure you want to do it? I just signed him up, but I'm thinking I should take his name off the list." I says, "Oh, no, don't do that. He's going to have a wonderful time. He's going to, but I love the fact that she's concerned. I love the fact that she cares. I love the fact that she has these worries. And I think once she's informed and once she has the confidence that we are going to take very good responsibility with her young person, and we're going to bring him back. He's going to be all right." This is like the fifth time. And she even called me by a different name, called me a different pastor. And I was like, no, I'm Pastor Love. "Oh, I've talked to you before." I wanted to say, "Yep, this is number 5. But it's okay. It's all right, because if you want a healthy youth ministry, you want parental involvement. You want to join with them as partners. Because, again, I know, I thought this way when I first started doing youth ministry. My attitude was, "Parents, don't slow me down. I got an agenda. I got things to do. I'm going to disciple your young people. I'm going to make them like Jesus. We're going to do everything. Just don't get in the way. Don't call me up and ask me a question." Gosh, don't you know that really sets me back when you call up and say, "What are they going to be doing?" I don't have to tell you that. Just want to get, we're busy. And yet, you learn through the course of time. That's very healthy. I'm grateful. I even say now, "Yeah, would you like to come?" Most parents are like, "Oh, no, thank you. No, I'm glad you're taking them away for the weekend. No, I have no desire to go to be a part of that." But it really is. It's healthy. So here's some thoughts I want to share with you tonight, and we'll wrap up this hour with these principles. As far as building a real team in your youth ministry with parents. Number 1, recognize your limited role as a youth worker. You're not the savior of the world. We're not just taking all these young people, throwing them on our back and climbing up to Mount Messiah. It doesn't work that way. You're going to develop a teamwork attitude when you realize that, think about this, the primary responsibility for their children's spiritual maturity lies with them, their parents. You're not the one primarily responsible for that. They are. You go back to the Old Testament in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verses 5 through 7. And Moses gave such clear instructions in that book of Deuteronomy regarding parents and their children and teaching them. He said, "You're to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. And then the commandments that I give today, you are to they're to be upon your hearts, but you are to impress them upon your children's hearts." Think about that. Talk about them when you sit down at home. And when you walk along the road, talk about them. When you lie down, talk about them with your children. And when you rise up, talk about them with your children. This was 24/7. The instructions given to the parents of the Israelites and their children. You've got to communicate these spiritual principles to your children. You've got to teach them. And the same responsibility holds true for those in the Church of Jesus Christ today. It's our responsibility, if we are parents, to raise our children. We do not turn to the experts. I've had parents over the years call and say, "Listen, can you just take them? You're the expert." The expert at what? At raising your children? We barely know them. Nobody knows them like you know them. We're going to make a fractional contribution. But the nature of the contribution that you make is the most significant one of all. Right? You think about it. How would you and I learn to be fathers? We watched our father. Right? How would we learn to discipline our children? We just can only remember how our father did it. Hopefully he did it right. It's not long before you know you're maybe sitting in the back seat of the car, or when you remember sitting in the back seat of your car and you're just going crazy with your brothers and sisters, and your father says, "Now, quiet down, or I'll pull this car over and I'll spank you." Right? You never hear that today, of course. But next thing you know, you're saying it. You're saying it to your children. You don't know what else to say, so you just remember what your father said. They're crying. Turn, sit down back there. I'll give you something to cry about. Where did you hear that? Well, my father said it to me. It must work. It worked when he said it. So we just kind of do that. It's just, that's what you learn. It's just kind of duplicated in the home. It's reproduced in the home. And if we're reproducing Christ in the home, I remember with my youngest daughter, I had this little, before she went to bed at night, would say our prayers with her, and then I'd play this little game. And then I would, she would say, I call it the I am game. And she would I would just tell her the word. And she would go, I am. And I would say, a believer. And she would say, I am a believer. And then she would say, I am. And I'd say, a child of God. She would say, I'm a child of God. And I did that. I just went through about 50 words every night before she went to bed. Because I just wanted her to think before she went to bed, I'm a child of God. I'm forgiven. I'm clean. I'm pure. I'm the object of God's love. I'm his child. I'm adopted. And then, you wake up. That's your last waking thought. First thought in the morning is you're still thinking the same way. Just, I just wanted them to know that's my responsibility. That's when she was lying down. When she got up in the morning, wanted to do it all over again. That's the responsibility that parents have. Parents do not abdicate their responsibility, turn to the so-called experts in the youth ministry and say, here they are. For God's sakes, make them spiritual. It doesn't work like that. But, we recognize, hey, I can make a fractional contribution. The coach of the Christian school team can make a fractional contribution. The teachers in the school can make a fractional contribution. The Sunday school teacher will make a fractional contribution. And you take all of those fractions and you put them together and you have the whole. And they get a ministry from everybody, not just one person. But all of those people that are making. But there is no more significant contribution than the parents of that child. Now, I know you could raise the issue in the culture that we live in today and say, what if the child only has one parent? What if that child has no parents? Then God, of course, would have a provision for those individuals. And no doubt it would be found in the body of Christ. But clearly, in a home, as we find it outlined for us, the institution of the home in Scripture, with a mom and with a dad, and perhaps with siblings, whatever the case might be, that's where the most significant contribution takes place. So the passage in Deuteronomy doesn't ask you and I or parents to shift the responsibility, the spiritual responsibility, to youth workers. It doesn't say that. It should not be expected. We cannot be responsible for changing everybody's life, but we can attempt to make a difference. We can complement what the parents are doing already in the lives of their children. Now, some parents, you know what I've discovered throughout the years? Some parents say, nope, I got it. They say, no need to send my children to youth ministry, no need to get them involved in a teen ministry. We're going to take sole responsibility for raising our children. Now, I think that that's good. I think it's healthy. I think it can be. But I also think that you may be removing a social aspect of their overall development that may be critically important to help them to develop as young adults. Because you got to learn to socially interact, right? Young people, if all they have is they go to school and then they come home and then there's no social interaction, I think that could almost cripple them from becoming, socially active, involved young adults that know how to interact with other people. So, I mean, there's pros and there's cons, and we're not here to debate them. I'm just suggesting that if parents choose to do that, it's fine. Maybe they don't participate in youth ministry on a consistent basis. Maybe once in a while. That's okay. Sometimes I've asked parents, we never see your young person. What are they doing? And then I'm expecting that sometimes the parents say, well, they said they were with you every weekend. It's like, no, we never see them. But most of the time, parents say, you know what, they stay at home. They're here. And I'm like, okay. I said, just want you to know that we're available. We'd love to have them. And if they want to participate, you have to know, and they have to know, obviously. They are most welcome. But if it's your, if that's your call, that's not a problem. So, again, the parents' role, crucial. And our role, let's not forget it, limited. Okay? Number 2, on purpose, develop a relationship with parents. Very, very difficult to create healthy teamwork unless, you spend time with the people that you don't know. You've got to get to know them. They've got to get to know you. It means that you have to conscientiously go out of your way in an attempt to meet these parents and maybe to get to know them by their name and maybe spend time with them. It could be, for example, we do this here, but when there are athletic events, as a youth leader, you're drawn to the young people because that's who you want to be with. But sometimes it would be advantageous for you as a youth worker to not just go and sit with the teenagers, but maybe to go and sit with the parents of the teenagers and get to know them. Take that as an opportunity to relate to them, to talk to them, to communicate with them so that they can get to know you better. You can get to know them a little bit better, and you can establish those relationships, build that trust, that once they have that trust, then they're more willing to give you what's most precious and most valuable to them, which, of course, are their children. I think it goes without saying that when you go out of your way to make an investment in the parents of the young people that you wish to reach and minister the gospel with, it's going to go a long, long way in helping you to that end, to that goal. So, find out who they are, find out what they do, find out what some of the challenges are in the home, see how you can in any way, shape, or form help, and just really bless and compliment what the parents are already doing. I just think it's very, very important that we do that because if you don't get together with parents, and by the way, we're not getting together with them so that we can teach them how to parent. That's not our goal. That's their responsibility, and everybody does that a little bit differently, so we're not there to straighten out their parenting or to improve their parenting skills, but just to develop relationships with them so that we can learn more about their children and we can all be on the same page together in terms of ministering to their children. All right? So develop relationships with the parents, very, very healthy. It's like building trust. It's like putting money in the bank, so to speak. It's like making an investment. And then when you need the parents to be there, to assist you, to help you, to get on board. I love the parents throughout the years that have come to me and said, listen, we talked about it the other night with my daughter, with my son, and I made it very clear to them. Whenever the youth ministry is doing anything, you're there. And I respond by saying, thank you so much. To know that, means the world to me. And it's always great when sometimes I might have to challenge the young people. And I've developed a relationship with the parents, and the young person goes back and they say, oh, Pastor Love was mean to me tonight. And the parent, they know me. They say, you know what? I know Pastor Love, and if he was mean to you, there was a reason for it. And I like that. I appreciate it because they know me. Now, if they don't know me, and they say, what? He was mean to you? Let's have a meeting with him right now. This little trick has been used throughout the years, teenagers. They don't come, and then I challenge them to come, and then they go home and they say, I'd go, Mom, I really would, but he does not like me. He does not like me. I tried to talk to him, and there was other people there. He was talking to them. He wouldn't even look at me. Mom, I'd go, but just the guy doesn't like me. Then the parents, they call me, can we sit down and meet? Yeah, absolutely. And the parents will walk in, they say, my daughter, you don't like my daughter. And the kid's just sitting there right there going, I got mommy on my side, I got daddy on my side, and I was like, oh no, that's not the case at all. I says, we want to welcome you into the fold. Come, be a part of it. You just got to, we're there, you just come. You can't come, you call us. We'll find a way to get you. And then, and sometimes the parents are given a whole different perspective. And sometimes the parents come in and they're talking to me and they're like, oh, well, I didn't hear that. Oh, I see why you had to raise your voice a little bit. You had to be firm with him. Oh, because he had his hands all over that girl. Oh, oh, okay. You see what I'm saying? It just completely, and that kind of communication is so important because young people will on purpose create these power plays so that they can step away from having any responsibility in the youth ministry and for being accountable in the youth ministry. So you develop those relationships with the parents, and they will not allow that young person to come home and run you down. They will not allow the young person to come home and speak evil of you, or to gossip about you, or to say he has favorites and he doesn't like me, or he's angry, he's mad at me. It's easy to do that, but it's not the truth sometimes. But you develop those relationships with the parents, and oh boy, what a difference that makes. Here's another thing that we could do with parents. Talk to parents, communicate with the parents about what their fears are in relationship to their children. Because a lot of parents have fears. You will really strengthen the teamwork that you need to have an effective youth ministry when you understand what parents of adolescents and teenagers are going through themselves. Don't just pretend to care about parents. Listen to them. Find out what they have to say, what their concerns are. Some of them have intense feelings of pain and fear and inadequacy. Some of them feel as though they're terrible parents. They don't even know what they're doing. You can build them up. You can love them. You can say, hey, you know what? We've all been there. None of us are experts. The experts usually end up failing miserably. As I've always said it, in growing up in this church, in this ministry, there were always 2 or 3 or 4 families that were kind of presented to us as the ideal family. And nobody ever said that. The pastor never got up, put this family on the stage and said, that's what you all should be like. And you looked at the kids and they're like perfect and they're just awesome and they're godly. And then you look at your kids and say, they got angels and we have demons. What happened? What happened to my kid? Why? You could just, you could just heap the condemnation upon yourself. Our kids aren't this, our kids aren't that, our kids are not, they're always in trouble. They're that. And yet these families, listen to this is a fact, these families that were put in front of us and presented as the ideal families, can I tell you something? They fell apart, friends. The marriages fell apart. The relationships in the home fell apart. Mom and dad fell apart. And then the kids fell apart. And everybody unraveled. And you know what that left the rest of us like? We were like, oh my gosh. Here we thought that was... But listen, you want to know how to raise children? You've got to go to God. You've got to cry out from the depths of your heart and say, God, I just don't know. I've never been this way before. I don't have parenting skills. And I don't care how many books you buy. And I don't care how many of them tell you how to raise the right kids and how to deal with the strong-willed child and how to deal with the little child that's really demon-possessed. You're never going to get all the answers. You're never going to get the answers because I'm going to tell you something. Your child or the young person in your youth ministry is going to break the mold. And that's okay because that just forces you and I, whether we are parents or whether we're youth workers, to turn to God and to cry out for help. Say, God, I need you. This young person needs you. These parents need you. Forget about the ideal. Love, invest, have compassion, listen, care, show up, make a difference. Keep investing, keep loving, keep showing up, keep making a difference. And you'll see in the end that investment will reap great, great rewards and great, great dividends. That's what God wants. Not looking for ideal youth workers. Coming to Bible college, taking a few courses that are related to youth ministry are certainly not going to prepare you for the challenges and the work that you'll face if God should call you to working in youth ministry. It's just not going to cut it. You're going to have to learn from experience. You're going to have to grow. So it's like I said earlier, parents, I used to see them as the enemy. Just get out of the way. Just give me those children. and I'll get them back to you in a few years, and they'll be just like Jesus. You'll be grateful that you dropped them off at my doorstep. That's not the way it works. Team effort. So talk to parents. Include them. And it'll make that big difference as well. And then here's a good thing to remember. Be sensitive to family priorities. Be sensitive to family priorities. Which might mean maybe you have to kind of minimize your youth ministry calendar so that they can maximize their family priorities. Because every family has a set of priorities. And we don't want to so fill up the calendar that these kids can't even be with their families. We've done that. Again, we've learned it through trial and error, right? Early on, it was like, Monday night we'll have a boys' night. Tuesday night we'll have a girls' night. Wednesday night they'll go to church. Thursday night we'll have outreach. Friday night we'll do downtown evangelism. Saturday night Bible study. Sunday church in the morning, church in the afternoon, church in the evening. And their kids, they're just never home. It's like mom and dad say they come in, but it's only to eat, that very quickly, sometimes change clothes. Sometimes we wish shower, sometimes they skip that too. And out the door they're gone. What are you doing? I'm going to youth ministry. We got another thing. Where are you going? Oh, we're going here, we're going there. Just pack the calendar. Every week, something. And sometimes you just got to slow it down. You got to be, and then, of course, inevitably, parents come and they say, you know what, you've done, thank you so much for loving my young person, investing in them. They're so excited about youth ministry. But, unfortunately, we'll have to curb it a little bit because they are completely failing every single class. They are getting F's straight across the board. And of course they are. Because they're so busy, they don't have time for homework. And then they just look at mom and dad when mom and dad say, well, they're all F's. Mom, Dad, I'm becoming a disciple. And you're concerned about temporal grades? I'm so shocked. And sometimes a parent can be intimidated by that, like, well, sorry. You should be. I'll be praying for you tonight when I get home from the youth meeting after 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it can happen. It really can happen. So what we have to be sensitive about are, the parents, the homes, maybe some gatherings in the home, maybe some priorities that they have that really could be more important than the priorities that we have. So we've got to kind of make some space for that. Give them some time to be home with their families. Sometimes young people say, we don't do anything on this night. We don't do anything on that night. I was like, they say, what are we supposed to do? I say, you're supposed to be home. You're supposed to be with your family. You're supposed to be enjoying that time with your families. And I think that that's great. Okay, we got our first question here. Ben, I got to give you the mic. Sorry. This is probably a very good question or comment, so we have to include it in the course. Hold that up nice and close.
I think this has to do with it. But back to the keeping the parents involved. I guess that's what we were just talking about. But what if the parent doesn't seem to care at all? Like, you try to talk to them. I mean, I know, like, a family in particular, I've tried to talk to them, and it's almost intimidating, them not caring so much that I've just given up. And, like, the kid's always outside. He's never at home. They know he's with me, but they have no idea what he's doing.
Sure.
And, I mean, it's actually a couple cases, but one in particular, like, and I've tried to, talk to them, and they just don't seem to care. So I finally gave up. Like, do I continue? Like, it's almost like it's annoying for me to come and talk to them.
The way I would answer that question is to say, continue to try to reach out to them. And it's always healthy that you keep informing them as to where you are, what your plans are, where you're going. Even if it's the minimal amount of information that you give them, stay in communication with them. Obviously, have all your paperwork in order in case, someday the worst case scenario is they begin to accuse you of something that you didn't do. In light of all of the events that are happening today on the campus of Penn State, for instance, and we talked about that in this course earlier, about abuse of children and how prevalent it is in our world and our culture today. So you don't want that to happen. But I mean, unfortunately, that can be all too often the case, the scenario that you just described. Parents that don't care. Parents that are actually bothered because you're trying to inform them about what you're doing and where you're going and when your young person is being picked up and when they'll be returned. They might not care, and that's okay. But I still would maintain a minimal amount of contact with them, and just to give them the basic information in case, God forbid, something were to happen, accident, transportation accident, something of that nature. Just, it's worth it, I know it can be frustrating because in your heart, you can't imagine a parent not caring for their child. Here you are with God's heart caring for their children, whereas in some instances they don't even care for their children, or so it would seem. But again, continue to maintain the communication, albeit at an all-time low and an all-time minimum amount of information. It's still healthy and it still protects and covers you as well. So I would say keep it up, but at the same time it is heartbreaking. But then again, all that does is all the more affirm to your mind that you're doing the right thing and that you need to be there in that young person's life. Because if you weren't there, nobody would be there. And then when you consider the possibilities and the alternatives to that, they could be just terrible or even deadly. So thank God that you are there. And again, it's kind of like when I picked up those kids years and years ago and we did that bus ministry. I couldn't believe that these parents didn't care. I mean, they never asked any questions, All they wanted to know is what time will you be back, because they were making their plans and they wanted to be sure that they were there when the children returned home, So I think that's why when the whole thing at Jonestown took place, I was kind of happy about it, because for the first time in my life, these parents were saying, "Who are you?" Imagine that. For months they gave us their children, and then after that whole incident, they were like, "Who are you people?" And it was like, instead of getting reactionary or defensive, saying, "Well, we're not with Jim Jones, we're not the People's Movement," or whatever they were. We just said, "I'm glad you asked. Is it possible that we could come in?" "Yes." "Do you have any written information?" "Yes, I have it right here." And then they started asking questions like, "Well, I know they have a good time because they always come back and they always talk about it and they're always excited and they always bring their papers that they did. But what do they do exactly?" And then you know what that resulted in? That resulted in some of those parents coming to the church, visiting, and then in some instances staying, getting saved, becoming a part of the local assembly. Great. We love that. That's what we want to see. Because God's not interested in necessarily just saving one. He would like to see the whole house saved. And Acts chapter 16, verse 31. So, again, just to underscore this point, our calendars, youth ministry-wise, may be very pleasing to the students, to the young people, but they could be very frustrating to the parents. Let's remember that. And if parents have a set of priorities, family priorities that they want to meet, let's cooperate with them. Let's say, "Hey, I don't want to undermine what you're doing as a family. I want to compliment what you do as a family. I want to bless what you're doing as a family. So tell me how I can help." If you think that it's just overkill as far as youth ministry is concerned, we're taking too many nights, too many hours, homework is now put on the back burner, and other priorities that should indeed, honestly, genuinely be priorities are being overlooked, you tell us. And we will make some adjustments and some changes if necessary. All right? And then the final one is support parental teaching. Support the parents' teaching. Some students will listen to what you have to say about their families more than what their families and their parents have to say about them. So you remember that. In other words, some students will never listen to their parents. But if you tell them something that's important to their parents and it comes from you, they'll listen to it. Because they've developed this relationship with you. They've developed this trust with you. You've actually imparted something to them. They really do believe that you have some knowledge, some wisdom, something that they need and they could stand to gain as a result of receiving it and hearing it. And then you kind of say, "Listen, you can say to them, your parents, they're a blessing, they're a gift from God, they're not the enemy. You know, they're not the ones that are going to try to squelch your spiritual life. They want you to grow. They want you to prosper spiritually. They want you to be blessed. They want you to be, conformed into the image of God's Son. They really do. So when they have times when they want to restrict you or limit your involvement in youth ministry or some activities, listen to them because they do care about you. We've all learned that if we grew up in a home that had parents, you learn only afterwards, only later in life, my gosh, they really did care. Right? They really did care. Some of the discipline that they implemented was because they cared. They did. They cared about us. They loved us. They were trying to protect us. They cared. But we couldn't have been. Now, if somebody that we did trust, somebody that was an adult mentor in our lives came and told us the same thing that our parents told us, we would receive it. But we just can't receive it from our parents. You see? So it becomes important that you and I, again, support parental teaching. And so, reinforce family life in your youth ministry. Reinforce decent family values. Also, along with the biblical message of obeying and honoring your parents. I mean, we should be teaching that in the youth ministry. Obeying, honoring your parents. It's healthy. It'll cause you to prosper. It'll cause you to live a good, healthy, long life. Those are great principles. And if then we come in behind the family and we reinforce what the family is doing, we come in behind the parents and reinforce what they're teaching with our teaching, then you're going to create a unity that's very, very difficult to come up against. It's going to be very helpful. Provide great boundaries for the young person. Okay? All right, let's take a break. And when we return, Richard Shepard is going to come up and he's going to be sharing with us about some research that he's done in relationship to young people in music. So this last hour together is going to be very interesting, very informative. So again, take a break, come back, let's say 8:15, no later than 8:15. Everybody back here in their seats, 8:15.